Okay, good morning, everyone. And this is day 4 of our working through Rule 1 in the Rays and the Initiations and some other areas in the latter part of the book of the Rays and the Initiations. Today we have 2 sentences to meditate upon, but actually they really go together. Behind the group there stands the door. Before them opens out the way. Huge implications to these sentences. Within the fire of mind, focused within the head's clear light, let the group stand. The burning ground has done its work. The clear cold light shines forth, and cold it is, and yet the heat evoked by the group love permits the warmth of energetic moving out. Behind the group there stands the door. Before them opens out the way. This will be our focus this morning. So we'll bring ourselves into a state of quiet. And in this quiet, we recognize that we are the observer. We are a point of being, a point of consciousness. Though the outer form would fall away, though our familiar feeling states and desires would be non-existent, though the many thoughts we have would not be with us, still we would be. So we find ourselves as the consciousness, the soul, in incarnation, presented with the familiar impressions of the 3 lower worlds, and yet belonging really to an inner and higher world, which now begins to emerge in our consciousness. We are always in, whether we realize it or not, this world of light, of interconnected unity and relational magnetism. This world of sacrificial will. We feel each other in soul presence. The group. Coming together as a group soul, as essentially one consciousness, and we extend this feeling of the one consciousness to the members of the new group of world servers everywhere. And to the men and women of goodwill across the globe. The sense of being in communion as souls. And if we can expand our sense of inclusiveness, inclusion, we turn our attention to all of humanity in their soul aspect. The soul of humanity. All human beings in the body, out of the body, all collected together. Excluding none, including all. In this soul relationship, where there is fundamentally one consciousness and one being, and we, as a point of tension within that soul of humanity, are working to bring light into that consciousness. We are connecting with higher worlds, because this soul of humanity is pervaded by a planetary mind which we can touch through the monastic part of our spiritual triad. This soul is pervaded by a planetary heart and love, which we can touch in the larger sense through our intuition. This soul is pervaded by a greater will, which is the will of the Logos of our planet, which we can participate in through touching the Atma, and the rainbow bridge, the many-colored bridge, which we visualize, is an instrument to help us do this. The bridge, primarily of indigo color, but with all the colors. Opening to the sense of being in the Spirit. As we think together with power, the second ray word of power, projecting the vivid line of lighted energy toward the Spirit, I see the greatest light. And this opens the group as a receiver, invoking and open to the evocation, entering the world where the masters can be found, working there, or at least in response to that world, and pledging our solidarity with these graduate human beings who guide the destiny of the planet. We pledge our solidarity with the Christ and his hierarchy. We know what field we are working in response to. And as we ponder together in the soul illumined mind, in the light of wisdom, we will maintain our alignment with these higher worlds. We will hold our consciousness within the fire of mind focused within the head's clear light. And there we sustain our point of tension, standing in alignment with the higher worlds, seeking added light and understanding as we ponder the subject for this morning. Where is it, then, that we as a group, affiliated with the larger group of esoterically oriented students, where is it that we stand? In what state of consciousness, state of understanding, state of awareness, dimension? Where do we stand? In one sense, we are to stand within the fire of mind, focused within the head's clear light. We are to maintain that standing. But now let us look at the progression of our progress. Imagine that you and the group are standing, maintaining a point of tension on the further side of the door of initiation. The door is left behind the group. There stands the door. So we use our creative imagination to see ourselves together, perhaps as a point of light, on the further side of that door. What is the feel of that position, of that standing on the further side of the door of initiation? And can you get any sense of how this feeling, this sense of standing with the door behind you is different from the feeling of standing with the door before you, not yet entered. Let us contrast the two impressions using the imagination. What are the thoughts that may pass through your mind as, using the creative imagination, you realize that you and the group have passed through this door of initiation? What thoughts come to you from this position, this stance on the further side of the door? Now, based upon this imaginative sense of being liberated from many things that concern the group before it opened the door or went through, you are now in a position, imaginatively of course, to look ahead towards the way. Behind the group there stands the door. Before them opens out the way. What is the way? Sometimes called the way of higher evolution. This way, as we may recall, can lead to greater service from Shambhala for the earth. It can lead to the cosmic astral plane, where work is done to improve the emotional condition of our planet. It can lead to development which one day will make of the monad and its associated monads a planetary logos. It can lead to the star Sirius for training as a solar angel. It can lead to the cosmic mental plane, where one can become a ray of a particular quality. It can lead to the possibility of becoming a logos who works through a star and a solar system. It can lead to the cosmic mental plane, where one becomes a karmic lord. And there are two other possibilities as well. All of them, of course, far beyond where we now stand. But can we get a sense of how treading such a way as a liberated monad would be different from treading the path which we are now treading, and which we, individually and as a group, have trodden to reach our particular point. We've been treading the path, and there is a way of higher evolution. Hold the contrast of these two approaches in your consciousness. And it becomes very obvious, doesn't it, that the jiva, the projection of the monad, has been treading the usual spiritual path, and that's what we're still treading, but that the liberated monad is treading the higher way. Behind the group there stands the door, and before them opens out the way. So, in your imagination, see that way opening out before you and the group. And make note of any thoughts, feelings, impressions that come to you when you imagine these higher possibilities. Realize the continuity, the continuousness between the past, the present, and the future. Where we have been, where we are going, and how it is that the path we are now treading as disciples, as coming initiates, as eventual arhats and masters, how this leads, all of this leads inevitably to the treading of the way, the higher way. From the earliest beginnings as a primitive human being, in times long forgotten, but one day to be remembered, advancing through the stages, physical, emotional, and now mental, soul, triadal, monadic. through the initiations, fulfilling your destiny here on this planet. In your own way, helping this planet become a sacred planet. All of this continuity, this ongoing development, in which we still have much work to do, leads to the Great Way and the 9 paths that we, as liberated spirits, will follow for millions upon millions of years. Behind the group there stands the door, the very beginning of the possibility of perceiving the way. Before them opens out the way. So look forward with anticipation towards the day, however many thousands of years from now it may be, when in full monadic consciousness you will tread one of those ways, accompanied by certain brother monads, but how, before that time, you and the group will do your very best here and now and in the lives to come to use all your abilities, accumulated and to come, to redeem this planet. A great monadic destiny lies before us all, and much work to do here for the next thousands of years. Within the fire of mind, focused within the head's clear light, let the group stand. The burning ground has done its work. The clear, cold light shines forth, and cold it is. and yet the heat evoked by the group love permits the warmth of energetic moving out. Behind the group there stands the door. Before them opens out the way. Together let the band of brothers onward move, out of the fire, into the cold, and towards a newer tension. And preserving this alignment in anticipation of our destiny, realizing our present and coming responsibility, we will sound together the great invocation. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. I think we begin to realize the kind of picture that Master DK has given to us. It's a huge picture, and it gives an incentive to every sincere disciple to work in such a way that that monadic destiny becomes possible sooner rather than later, and to do everything right here in this world with very firm intention, very attentively putting aside many secondary things to get on with this process of destiny. It gives a lot of encouragement and something to strive for, and it lifts human vision away from childish things towards realities that the masters can see and they can convey to us. We have a little bit of time if anybody would like to report any impression or realization in connection with behind the group there stands the door, before them opens out the way. Obviously, this is ahead of us. We use our imagination, act as if, creative imagination, but it can get you into the right state of mind, consciousness, to begin to realize what is possible. It will not be less demanding. No. It will not be less demanding. Picture of small children playing.
What I thought was that, well, you start all over being a child again, so you have to grow up in this new position.
Yes, it's start over like being a child again. Yes, Exactly. When we are third degree initiates, we are humble probationary disciples in the Syrian path, where it's like we are the first degree with the respect to the sun. So when the Christ refers to the little ones, like he means the early initiates, so we get to be masters, and then we are humble first degree initiates with respect to Sirius. And the whole idea of play is interesting because, he describes the path to Sirius as those who tread it as being blissful dancing points of fanatical devotion. They dance along the way. These children playing with sand and pebbles, but they had some toys. The toys, all of our accumulations from millions of years on the earth. Well, yeah, it's sometimes called the endless way. Of course, that's the question. Is it really endless? It just seems endless. It's not really endless. But what a destiny. And that's not the end either, of course. I mean, we may reach a constellation within the one about whom naught may be said. These paths are said to lead to certain constellations. There's debate about which ones are which, but at least we're pretty definite about Sirius. And even then, that's not, I mean, even when we become galactic beings in these island universes, which are really just tiny atoms in much huger beings, it's just another beginning, So there's so much that could lift human depression, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Human depression is such an interesting thing because we're so tied up in our own elemental condition. Here are the vehicles. They're in good shape. They're in bad shape. I fulfill my desires. I don't, And this feeling of being a confined human being settles on many, and their spirits become deflated. But when you look at what is offered, and DK every once in a while hints at this, first of all, he just starts with the wonder of the new age. He just starts with that, and that eye hath not seen and ear hath not heard what the planetary logos plans for the ongoing, onmoving spirit. And that's just the beginning of beginnings of beginnings. So I guess the teaching is very elevating in this sense. It gives a tremendous sense of optimism for the ever-expanding spirit. And that's why to convey this teaching to as many as can receive it is a very important thing to lift human expectation and the way people just behave in the world, I mean, we have a culture in the world which is just loving death at the moment because it's so hopeless. And all of those ridiculous negative thought forms have to be turned around entirely. And that's where our responsibility is coming in, because the universe is meant to be, it is, in a way, the plaything of the absolute. The universe is a big toy, in a way. This is a creative project. We're all involved in this great drama, dance, play, whatever you want to call it. It needs a reconception, a very strong reconception, because the human consciousness is so terribly limited when thinking about the future. Any other impressions? Yes, Anne. A planner where you... A planner, yes. You had a planner in your hand. It's taken out of your hands. Okay. Uh-huh. Well, that somehow has a lot of reality to it. I keep on thinking about those jokes. I guess it's a German joke, but maybe it's in every. It says "Man tracht und Gott lacht." So man plans and God laughs. The best laid plans of mice and men gang up the gley, says Robert Burns. So if there's something in us that's got a fuller plan than we can put in our planner. So maybe that is kind of a hint about listening to the intuition for what's really trying to happen. This must be very distressing if a seventh-ray person has their planner taken away. Also had the thought. This. The door was closed. There's no way back. Did you say exciting? A little fear. Did you say fear? Fear, but also. Oh, you can't go back. No. But very excitement. Yeah. I think there are certain plateaus that you cannot, than which you cannot descend any lower. In other words, even the ashram guards you from falling back. So when the third degree is really passed, which the members of the Black Lodge cannot do, this is a great stabilization for the onward way. And so all there is forward. Up to that time and before the middle point between the second and third degree, it is possible to fall back. DK does tell us about this. It is possible to lose one's bearings and to veer off to the left, but eventually, of course, over the long run, everything is redeemable and redeemed. So we will reach that point of stabilization when we achieve true mental polarization between the second and the third degree. That means we go into the desert like Jesus dramatized for us. Of course, it may have been the Christ through him as well. And we overcome the devil in three forms, and then we are liberated to follow the Syrian way, and from that way we cannot fall back. Although, on higher levels, it's possible for planetary logoi to temporarily fail, even solar logoi to temporarily fail. So I'm talking about falling back as a human being. But there are other tests that will lie ahead. Just think about successful and unsuccessful galaxies and so forth. Anyway, there's plenty of interest to keep us involved forever. So, as a matter of fact, when you begin to think of how big it is, you begin to realize that there is something in the human brain that just wants to shut down and exclude all that stuff because it's just too much. Like Aldous Huxley said, a reducing valve. Our consciousness is kind of a reducing valve to keep too much of reality from coming in. It's only as much as we can handle, Any other thoughts? Yes, Mate. The importance of continuity, working as a group. Yeah. And exactly. Hierarchy is waiting for our help. Exactly. And, the past leads to the present, leads to the future. I mean, it's just so obvious. This way of higher evolution looks like, how many thousands of years ahead is it for many of us? But we did go over that the other day, didn't we? And we figured that 5,000 or 6,000 was a good figure. But it's inevitable. It's just inevitable. So we might as well do as well as we can everything that is immediately before us and not waste time. Master Mori was interesting. He said about wasting time. He said, if you waste your own time, it's equivalent to suicide. If you waste someone else's time, it's equivalent to murder. He has a way of being very impressive. You tend not to forget what he says, So I tell that to people who are wasting my time. Any other thoughts? Yes, a sea of light. Golden prana. It turned out to be golden prana. Yes, what's really interesting about the ocean of bliss and Neptune and the sea of light. Neptune is our planet of bliss, and it also rules the sea of light. And it is, in a way, the great formless planet out of which all the forms descended. So these ideas do fit together. And, in the spirit, bliss is experienced. The Blessed One, in our esoteric psychology books, the Blessed One is the spirit. He's also the Blissed One, blissed out Blessed One. This is who we essentially are, in a state of bliss on our highest levels. And we've kind of forgotten that, in our long journey into matter. The essential bliss that resides in the highest areas of our being has been somewhat forgotten and is occasionally recaptured. And a lot of people, they use the illegitimate Neptunian ways to try to recapture that bliss. You got to kind of earn your way via Saturn, but they want a direct train right back to the bliss, so all kinds of stuff, including drugs, of course. Get me back there to where I'm blissful. But there are laws, Saturn, about how to return. This, of course, is not realized by those who are ruining their lives in other ways, nor do they realize their motive for using, the existential motive for using these illegitimate means. When I say illegitimate, it means unlawful. So there's quite an interesting relationship between Saturn and Neptune in terms of the time it takes to return to timelessness. Any other thoughts? Yes. Venus is on the way, I think. Venus is a good, really jumping off point for Neptune. The higher octave. Neptune is the higher octave. Venus is a good jumping off point for Neptune, and Mercury is a good jumping off point for Uranus. They are both lesser gods that are going to be absorbed in greater gods, but then they have the quality. So one of the great legitimate means of recapturing the bliss is through art and beauty. See, that's the Venus path back to Neptune. I don't know how we got there, but anyway. Okay, good. So now it is the moment. It's 1:45. We'll come back just before 9:30, and we will talk about the door and the way. And of course, in this kind of class, we are supposed to study the 7 ways of higher evolution. I don't think in the PhD class we ever quite got there because it was a little distant. So maybe we'll be more fortunate this time. We'll see. All right. See you a little later. Okay, friends, and thank you for joining us, Andrew and Daniel and Johanna and Lynn. Thank you. And we'll be back in 45 minutes and going on to study this particular sentence. So don't, if you want to be with it, just leave your name on the webinar rather than signing out, because one can drop off and have trouble getting back on. See you then.